Welcome to my presentation on Want to Throw a Library Comic Con? You can afford it. Hello, my name is Allison Sills. My email is asills@cccc.edu, and I am an instructional librarian at CCCC, Central Carolina Community College. But just prior to this, I was a cataloging and tech services librarian at Lee County Libraries, where I also created and ran the library's comic book convention for 5 years. Since 1987, I've attended over 150 events across 15 states. Passion certainly makes starting and running a Comic-Con easier. And fun fact, I am such a sci-fi fan that a friend of mine who worked at Dark Horse Comics actually named a character in a short comic strip after me. You can see the picture here. The character's name is Allison Sills, spelt Star Wars style, and she's a force-wielding scoundrel. So why are Comic-Cons and libraries a good fit? Reading comic books is a wonderful way to get those reluctant and lapsed readers back into the library. Comic-Cons spark creativity, not just for the comic books themselves, but also for all of the associated businesses that come with those cons, like crafters and cosplayers. And they also engender camaraderie. Comic book stores are having a harder and harder time these days. Comic book readers deserve a place to get together and share their passions, and libraries are the perfect fit for these activities. So, how to get started? First, make local connections. You never know who might be a nerd, so talk to everybody. Non-nerds with vastly different interests and life experiences will know other people who are nerd adjacent. For instance, one of my coworkers who had zero interest in sci-fi and fantasy knew a local young man through church who had been an extra in Marvel's Black Panther. And in 2018, there was no property hotter than Black Panther. And we invited him, and he actually came down from his university just to talk to us. And put yourself out there as a fan, and other fans will come to you. Wear the Harry Potter sweater and use those Star Wars pins. Strangers will talk to you. Conversely, if you see someone rocking everyday cosplay or putting themselves out there, talk to them and let your staff know that you are interested in finding such souls, and they will introduce you when they find them. Go to local events. This is where you'll meet the future stars of your event. Talk to everybody and get their cards. Local events can be Renaissance fairs, Viking experiences, other Comic Cons, motorcycle shows, car shows. I've gotten several vendors from a motorcycle rally. Even at your farmer's market, you'll find crafters making stained glass ornaments of Doctor Who's TARDIS. And if you want star cars, reach out to promoters of local car events. And go to bigger events. I start by visiting every booth with original art that I liked, and I ask, where are you located? If it's more than 2 hours away, I say, that's great, thank you. If it was within a 2 hour drive, I'd ask follow-up questions. Talk to them about their stuff. Tell them you like it. Tell them about the amazing con that you are putting together. Tell them it's a library and you're going to make it amazing. But you really don't have to bury the lead because people love libraries. I have been blown away by how far simple enthusiasm gets you. Love them and love your event. So what should you include? Here are some examples of things you can include and what you can expect to pay for them. So for free, you've got local guest speakers. My town has a Bigfoot festival and a ghost walk, so I contacted them and asked them to attend. Local star cars. I found a local star car at my local movie theater. You can always look at local car shows too. Film festival with local filmmakers. Research other local film festivals, and if you're lucky, one might be from your hometown. Partnered businesses. This could be your local comic book store or game store. Featured vendors, the forming kind. We were very fortunate to have a local blacksmith who not only sold the items he made, but he was willing to demonstrate how he made them. This could also be costume makers who love cosplay. Featured comic book writers and artists. I found several great artists at local conventions and invited them to our convention. People who say yes to a library con are just the best people in the world. Always appreciate your yeses. Those people could be your first guest speakers. Food trucks. Use streetfinder.com to find local food trucks. The market is wide open on these. So if you need to raise a little extra money, you could sell spots to vendors. Our goal was to cover basic costs, so we never charged much. We wanted our vendors to make more money, so we capped our spots at $20 per spot. Find donors and sponsors, ask friends with businesses, ask your local arts council or tourism board for sponsorship because a good con will bring people into town. Your library might also be able to have a small budget for this event. We partnered our event with summer readings so that it could come out of that budget. Expenses. So these are things you're going to spend money on. Inexpensive. Costume contest prizes. We found a company on Etsy that would make a pretty nice custom trophy for about $20 a piece. You might also ask your look if you have a local trophy place to make them and see if they might do it for a sponsorship tag. Kids programming. Again, because we held our event at the end of summer reading, we had a budget to buy coloring papers and supplies. We also had our own 3D printer. And one time we printed small white Yodas for a Paint a Yoda event. You could also, one year we splurged on what are called blank cover variant comics, which is an official print of a comic book, but with a mostly white cover. We bought a bunch of these one year and had kids design their own. It was kind of fun. And the kids at the end got the bonus of having the comic book on the inside. Medium expensive. If you have enough for $200 to $800 budget, entertainers. We partnered with a local Renaissance Fair troupe who usually performed for tips. Because it was a library, we felt patrons should be able to enjoy every activity of the con without being required to pay for it. So we actively sought to make our events completely free for patrons. In that spirit, we offered our reenactors an affordable flat fee for the day, and they accepted. Game trucks are a fun thing to add to a con. They are very eye-catching, and you can advertise them as a draw for the day. They can be a little on the pricier side of this medium expensive, but they are an option. Arcade machine rentals. We were very fortunate to have a local man who rented out old-fashioned arcade machines that he restored, and he was a fan of the library, so he very graciously offered us a great deal to attend. Tell your people your budget and see if they will meet you there. Star cars driving in. We tried to offer our star cars driving in from great distances either some gas money or a free lunch at one of our food trucks. Always appreciate those yeses. Virtual famous speakers. Maybe you follow someone on Instagram that is chatty with their fans. Maybe you met them at a con. See if they will Zoom call at your con. It's a fun way to get a big star for a reasonable price. And just plain expensive. Speaking of famous speakers, if you want a real live celebrity, things are going to get pricey very quickly, which I very much did want to get a famous person in person. But just know, if you decide to cross the Rubicon, that you will be paying not only their appearance fee, which would start around $2.5K, but is probably actually going to be $5,000 to $10,000. There is also, to add to their cost of appearance, a daily per diem, which is daily food gas allowance. There's also airfare, which is only going to go up because they usually insist on being flown first class. They also usually require signage. Most guests will expect you to provide a banner to hang behind them. This alone could cost around $200. And don't forget room and board and transportation, which you could get donated or sponsored if you ask really, really nicely. It's just something to think about. It's really $2,500 is the absolute minimum you can expect to pay for this kind of thing. So, comic book convention elements. Decide what you want to include, and it's okay to start small. My first year was unique because I was working as part of a multi-location event, and some of the elements like the costume contest and vendors were covered by other locations. So to avoid competing with them, I focused almost exclusively on providing programming at the library. My first year, I invited the CCCC Student Gaming Club to provide tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic. And I also provided tabletop games that the library already owned. I coordinated some small kids crafts and then searched for and provided about 5 hours of original programming, including a comic book writer that I found, that extra from Black Panther, and talks with our local ghost and Bigfoot groups. We also had a gaming truck, which was admittedly a little expensive, but I felt we needed to draw interest to our part of the event. My second year in 2019, we kept all of the original elements from the first year and we added some more, like we added one star car, we added a food truck, and more comic book writers and artists. We also used our auditorium for an inflatable planetarium that we checked out from our state university. Our guests that year included a couple of award-winning makeup artists who ran a nearby haunted house attraction. Year 3 was the year of COVID, so we went all virtual, but it was kind of a blessing in a way because remember I mentioned virtual speakers? Just as we were stuck at home, so were a lot of creative people. I started reaching out to some dream guests and all of them said yes. So not only were we able to get some sterling guest comic book writers and artists, but we were able to get a really great podcaster that I followed, a 3D artist and miniature maker, and a movie star actually spoke to us too, the latter of which agreed to speak at a very reasonable price. People could not have been nicer, and we also added a virtual costume contest, the only stipulation being that you had to live in town because we were only handing out our prizes curbside. 2021 and 2022, year 4 and 5, we were back in the world and we blew it up. We converted our parking lot into an area for outside vendors like a Ren fair, and we were able to add a lot of vendors with those spaces. We kept both our virtual and we added live guests. We added a film festival that was moderated by a local film enthusiast, and we added additional entertainers like a cosplay troupe, a Celtic music band, a bouncy house. It expanded exponentially and a good time was had by all. But the costs also went up quite a bit. So how did we spend our budget? In 2018 and 2019, every person we invited to speak had to come for free. That was part of the deal. Our only expense was the gaming truck that we rented. We did it, like I said, to make a splash on the street and to alert passersby that something special was going on, because those things are huge. And the kids loved it. Each time the gaming truck was sponsored by our friends at the library. In 2020, we really lucked out that we only had to pay for one virtual appearance. We had originally planned to bring this actor to the con in person. He was sponsored by our friends. That was before the COVID hit. And then COVID hit, and he graciously agreed to attend virtually. That was a lot of fun to do. It was a Zoom interview live streamed on Facebook. Thankfully, we had some techies who knew how to set all that up. And you can find these videos on the website of the library that I worked at. I'll include links on my reference page. 2021, you can see that we vastly increased our budget. We did this through more sponsorships and by converting our parking lot into vendor spaces and selling more of those. You can see what those paid for. We had 2 famous virtual guests. We added a second costuming group. We added our retro arcade games. We added the film festival too, but that was at no charge to us. And in 2022, we further added things like the Celtic music group. We also bought a lot of banners and real printed signage. And we also bought food for our non-paid entertainers, volunteers, and staff. It seemed a small way to pay them back for showing up for free. Remember, appreciate the yeses. Recruiting talent. Here's how you recruit talent. Remember business cards. Get people's business cards and choose people and art that you really like. Your enthusiasm is contagious. Look for a diverse group of artists and look for a broad selection of crafts. I tried not to pick any more than one example of any kind of art. Like I might have 2 toy crafters, but one was knitted toys and one was sewn toys, just so everybody felt like there was a fair shake. Or if I did have more than one, like jewelry makers, I would place them equidistant apart around the con. to give them some breathing room. And keep talking to people. Take your business card, pass them out to people. You never know where you'll see someone selling geeky items that might fit your event perfectly. Keep getting business cards, start a Rolodex if you don't know what that is, or keep a card box. I cannot stress this enough. And by that I mean potential sales are the reason business cards are printed. So don't be afraid to ask for those business cards. They're essential. Get those business cards. This is how to find local groups to partner with. First, go to interesting local events like we had a Bigfoot festival. We have those in North Carolina. So look around for those. Ghost walks. Do you have a ghost walk in your town or a local legends account? These are great interests. They'll bring in your local people. Comic books and gaming stores, ask them not only to attend, but to be a sponsor too, or to run your gaming all day. Gaming clubs, they exist in your town. You just have to find them. Cosplay clubs, some notable ones include the 501st, Rebel Legion, Mandalorian Mercs, the Society for Creative Anachronisms, also called the SCA. They've been around since 1966. Contact these clubs and ask them if they'll come and represent at your con. Anime clubs, ask at your local schools and colleges to find these. Amateur filmmakers, one example of a con to visit to find these is Con Carolina. They're a sci-fi con in Charlotte. They have a film festival. Go one year and see if any of the applicants are in your area. But there are also film festivals all over the state, including Carolina Fear Fest, and there's Nevermore Film Festival in Durham. There are many. Just Google them and then attend and talk to the creators and find one close by who's willing to come to your con. I might be alone in this, but I love star cars. I found several just by talking to car enthusiasts and finding owners. When I see one out in the wild, I'll just go up to them. Hey, do you live near Sanford? Or wherever you are from. Star car owners love showing off their handiwork. And everyone loves libraries. They'll come and hang out. Maybe. Appreciate the yeses if you get one. Fan clubs can be very helpful because they bring the fans with them. Some fan club examples are the Doctor Who Fan Club Meetup, Star Trek Starfleet ship in your area. Raleigh is the USS Kitty Hawk, the 501st group that I mentioned before, the Rebel Legion again. And don't forget about model building clubs. You can even showcase some of the models in your display area at your library. Connect with your arts council. They might know some local comic book artists. Those artists will know other artists. This is how it begins. Connect with your Parks and Rec, especially if they have an outdoor space. I'm sure they'd like to cross-pollinate their summer activities with your captive audience. And if you have any zoos, they could bring small animals for kids' activities that might be related to medieval times, like foxes. One of our local bird conservancy groups held crows and owls, which they brought out for free to teach the kids how they were used in those times. And finally, search for your local NASA Solar System ambassador. They are volunteers who keep their status as an ambassador by speaking for free at events. They are a wonderful way to bring science fact to your event. Send invitations to good fits and curate your guests. So now you've got all your moving parts. You've paid for your talent. What are some of your unexpected expenses? Advertising. There are so many ways to get the word out. You can pay for social media boosts, newspaper ads, radio ads. Start advertising months in advance because it takes people months to register that this is happening. The way you choose to advertise really depends on your budget. And you can see the breakdown I have here of how expensive things are in order. Signage. Get those standing sandwich boards if you can afford it, and sign holders. Print what you can and then have posters and way signs professionally printed if you can. If not, use what you got. Also, get your employees and volunteers sashes or something easily identifiable like a lanyard so attendees know whom to ask for questions. Other unexpected expenses include decorations. Just the poster board you see in this photo cost around $10, and we had four doors to do, two sets of double doors. You might want to also have decorative fringe or a photo backdrop. Photo backdrops are worth their weight in gold because the costume contest is going to be, if not one of your biggest, then the biggest draw of the day. Put something fun up so cosplayers can get photos of themselves. Find a local photographer and see if they will volunteer for the day for a sponsoring advertisement. It's free advertisement for everybody involved. And food. Staff will not be able to leave your con very easily, especially after all your vendors have parked, all of your attendees have parked. So make sure that they have something there to eat. Have a green room with snacks and water. Offer them a food voucher at your food trucks if you can afford it. Also offer unpaid entertainers like the 501st cosplayers who walk around in their stormtrooper costumes all day a safe place to change clothes. You can give them a study room or a conference room that you are not using. Advertising and sponsors. Some advertising ideas include social media boosts on Facebook and Instagram. You can push your posts to many people if you want to pay for it. Newspaper ads. These might be expensive, and make sure your local paper is a popular paper. Put your money where you think it'll get the most out of your money. Radio ads. Do people listen to the radio anymore? Maybe. If you have a local radio station, see if they will advertise you for a sponsorship advertisement. Ask to be interviewed on the radio. Get the word out for free as best you can. Do you have a local TV station? Present your event and see if they're interested in talking about it for free. Put flyers up at popular places. Put flyers up at the library's table at events leading up to the con or all year. Place postcards for your event at designated areas at other local events, cons, and larger events. And use word of mouth to advertise your con. Ask all of your clubs, sponsors, and vendors to post and talk about you too. Sponsor ideas. Your first sponsor is likely going to be your friends of the library. Present to them all the elements of your con and allow them to be first pick and to sponsor a part that they want. Make sure that when advertising each part of your con that is sponsored, that you are identifying the sponsor. Local nonprofit organizations like the Arts Council and the Tourism Board were very eager to partner with us because we can cross-pollinate and cross-advertise each other. We bring attention to artists and we also bring in tourists. Local businesses. And the business doesn't have to be nerdy to be a sponsor. Cons can be sponsored by banks, hotels, coffee shops, and other businesses. And ask businesses physically close to the library too, as they're going to see increased foot traffic that day. And sponsorship isn't always money. Find a photographer. You will not regret it. Ask them to provide free photos for the event and for cosplayers for a sponsorship advertisement. Growing. Ways to grow could be to evaluate your space and make the absolute most of it. Add vendors. Close off your parking lot, plot out your outdoor space and your indoor space, and use every inch of it. And that can get interesting when you have 15 tables of different sizes. Maybe you standardize the sizes. We had indoor spots at 6 feet and outdoor spots were about the size of a parking space. Rent an inflatable planetarium if you have an empty conference room. Add a bouncy house if you have a good sized lawn. Add food trucks. See if there's a neighboring parking lot that you can use, or go to the city and see if you can shut down a road for your special event. Just be kind to your food trucks and let them know the facts about your anticipated attendance if you want them to come back again. Bring in a wild animal rescue or local zoo. You can add sponsors each year, especially if the word gets out and your event takes off. People will be more likely to sponsor an event after a successful event. Add guests. And about adding guests, remember what I said about live guests? They're expensive. If you decide to splurge on a live guest for no small amount of money, I strongly advise you to get a signed contract. Let me repeat that, get a signed contract. If you are going to spend over $1,000 for any one person, get a signed contract with precisely what is expected and get the actual person to sign it themselves. I had some shaky experiences going through, air quotes, online agents who purported to represent people. These online agent houses are agents who just know other agents. They are not directly connected to the star, and their performance has been not good. Let me put it that way. If you want a star either virtually or in person, find them at a con and ask them or their handler, who is often their actual agent, in the autograph line who you should talk to. Those people that you find online are not going to get the job done for you, and I don't want to see anyone losing money over them. Here's some random tips and tricks. When to have it. I highly recommend avoiding Halloween. It sounds like a natural fit, but competition for that weekend for patrons' attention is fierce. Look for local events and try to pick a weekend that isn't booked. I would not recommend picking a weekend of a big nerd con at either Raleigh or Charlotte. And Dragon Con in Atlanta is the biggest con in the South. That is Labor Day weekend. We picked the last weekend before school starts and extended our summer reading until that weekend. It allowed us to pass out summer reading prizes and blow up our end of summer reading party. Permits. If you are going to have people with tents pounding in stakes into the ground, call 811 and fill out one simple form to have all of your utilities come out and show you where the lines are buried. Then avoid their flags. Open fire. We had a wonderful blacksmith at our event, but he had to have an open fire to work. Call the fire department and get a permit. Beer, mead, wine sales, get your board's approval first and maybe even the town's approval. We had sales, but no open bottles. You can also designate a section of your area for those vendors if it makes people feel more comfortable. I do recommend getting these kinds of vendors though, because they are very popular. Food trucks and pollution. Because we had live performers, we needed to know the decibel level of the generators of the food trucks. So we created a Google form for the trucks to fill out that information in. And then we put our louder trucks in places away from live performers. Also, please keep in mind food trucks run continuously, so make sure that they don't angle their exhaust toward your vendor tables. This is one reason we toyed with the idea of closing a street if we could, because then we could park the food trucks a little bit further away from our vendors. Find tables and chairs and garbage cans. Not only will some of your artists, writers, and vendors appreciate it, but if you have food trucks, people will need a place to sit and eat. Similarly, if you have food, you will need more garbage cans. This is something we forgot the first year and was one of the only complaints we received. Borrowing items from another department is a way to partner with them. If you're a government, you should be able to contact your general services for help finding these items, but also ask your vendors to bring their own tables and chairs if possible. Real vendors know the drill and probably have their own tents too. Costume contest has age groups and rules. Decide this in advance and put those age groups and the rules on your costume contest entrance card. You can find an example of one of those on Lee County Library's PopCon page at this address. And where is everyone parking? Make a bespoke parking map. Talk to surrounding businesses and find all the places you can and all the places you cannot park, and make a legend with specifics for them. You can find an example of one that we made on Lee County Library's PopCon page at the same address as above. Here's some tips and tricks continued. Make a very detailed map of your event. You can see an example here. This map is in very rough form. This is not how it looked finally, but this map is to scale. Measure your space, and like I said before, use every inch of it. I put this here so you can see not only how we used our space, but where we put things in relation to each other. You can see where we put changing rooms and stages, and T is for table. We put our writers and our graphic artists inside and our vendors typically outside, just because the artists and the writers often had tables of paper products and our event was a rain or shine event. But this didn't have to be the rule. In fact, several writers wanted to be outside and more evenly spaced out. So just make sure that your vendors have enough space for their tents and be very transparent about where people will be located and how much space they will have. We found that a typical car parking space had just about the right amount of room for a tent. Again, don't forget spaces for garbage cans. And one last thing, the reason why this is not the final draft is because we had our archery in line of sight of the bouncy house and we reversed them. Even though the archer's arrows were foam tipped, it was decided that there was enough potential risk, so we swapped how they were located. And this is just one more thing to keep in mind. Tips and tricks continued. We had a lot of information we wanted to put on our brochure, including a list of artists, a list of vendors, a schedule, and a map of the event. Here is a short video of how we laid out our brochure and a cute way that we folded it to look like a book. You set the tone, Carter. I don't know if anybody remembers ER from the 90s and the early 2000s. It ran for about 15 years, great show. But one of the most memorable lines from the show was when the older chief surgeon hands over the reins to the newest chief surgeon, whom we'd seen pretty much grow up in his ER. And in this case, here am I, the learned elder, handing down my knowledge to you, saying, remember, you set the tone for your event. Create clear rules and put them in writing. If you want to keep your event from turning into a regular old craft fair, you will need to specify that vendors sell science fiction, fantasy, horror, and medieval related items. You'll have to learn when to say no. Here's an example of some text you can use in your vendor forms. San Diego Comic-Con is one of the most prestigious and largest cons in America. I mimicked a lot of San Diego Comic-Con's application information at the time we created our application. I'll drop a link to their current website so you can see what they are doing now in my references and credits page. You'll see here some language highlighted, like applicants must sell applicable products and services to popular nerd and geek culture topics. Additionally, never forget, this is your event. You have every right to ask additional and follow-up questions after an application is submitted. And just the act of submitting an application and paying does not guarantee a space at the event. Create a congratulations email and a kind rejection email as well for applicants. It's okay to have clear boundaries. And finally, I said it before several times, appreciate those yeses. You will get rejected a lot. Don't be discouraged. Leave some conversations open because no's might become future yeses. And when someone does decide to give you their time, often for free, remember to appreciate that. Express gratitude. Thank people. People really need it, and it's free to do so. It's just a form of appreciation. And keep in touch with people from time to time and like them on Facebook and Instagram. Enrich your relationships because every relationship can lead to a new person to get to know. Make time to see your event. In my case, I would ask others to cover the costume contest, not only so I could watch it as a viewer, but also so I could walk around the con that I had kind of built. I wanted to look and see and enjoy it and talk to people. I also wanted to grab a bite to eat. Block in a small part of time. Find a way to enjoy your hard work. And start planning for next year today. Give attending vendors next year's application and see if they'd like to sign up for a spot next year. It'll be a time saver. Here are my references and credits for today's talk. If you'd like to see examples of virtual interviews that were conducted, you can visit Lee County Library's YouTube page and check out the interviews we did there. Thank you for your attention. Here is a parting photo of your narrator today with David Tennant, the 10th and 14th Doctor Who. This was taken at a large sci-fi convention in Raleigh. Comic-Cons, both attending and hosting, are super fun. If you have any questions or would like to talk to me about anything you've heard here, please email me at asills@cccc.edu. Enjoy your travels, and again, thank you for listening. Allons-y!